Hi everyone, thank you for coming to this talk. It's gonna be a journey, feedback from what we've done inside Michelin. So you know Michelin. So this is what the journey to open source. And we could have renamed the title to How We Get Our Lawyers to Contribute on GitLab too. And this is no joke, no metaphors. That's we try to build the OSPO the way we believe software should be built, you know, like in the open, collaboratively, with everyone on the table, like lawyers, security guys, and our policy, the governance document, as you will see, the legal templates, everything is version on GitLab, and that's how we got the lawyers, but we will come back to that. And so we're here to talk about this journey today. And to help me with that, so I'm Florent Zara from the Eclipse Foundation, and I was called by, I'm providing professional services to our members to help them better embrace open source. And I was called someday by Michelin and Julien.
So hello everyone, I'm Julien Millau. I am IT Distinguished Engineer at Michelin for software development. I'm also member of the Michelin OSPO team as core member. So let's talk a little bit about Michelin. When we speak about Michelin, what is Michelin? A Michelin is that. In France, we say Michelin. A Michelin is a train on tires. You know well Michelin is three pillars. The one pillar is to sell and create tires. The second pillar is to offer service around tire for fleet, for tires per kilometers. And the last pillar is about the red guide, about the Michelin wine that we have with Robert Parker, some hotels that we have from Tabet Hotel. So we have a big ecosystem, tires, around tires, and beyond tires. When we speak about IT in Michelin, we speak about more than 4,800 people that work in IT. We are mainly in France, in India, in the US, and in China. So it's distributed around multiple zones. And some key figure about the world where we work. We have more than 2,000 websites that we manage, and we have a lot of teams that manage many applications in Michelin. So this is the OSS timeline that we have in Michelin. We start developing with open source program, mainly in Java for Michelin. We start that in 2002, where we start our own framework, that we build our own framework with external components in open source. So we mainly consume open source at the beginning. After that, in 2009, we start to contribute. So we enable contribution. So we decide that some people in the company can contribute to external project. For the little joke or little reference, we participate when Oracle acquired Sun. We participate to that, and we decide to fork Hudson. Hudson was the tools used to automate some tasks, and we decide with some core contributor to fork Hudson to create Jenkins. And for example, in Jenkins, we all the authentication part and all the right management in Jenkins has been made by Michelin at the beginning. So after some contribution, some years of contribution, we have contributed to some critical projects that we use in Michelin. So for example, Kafka or GitLab, we have made huge contribution on that. And in 2020, we start to create open source, so create new project, expose project that we create internally, externally. And after that, we decide to create an OSPO just to govern that and to help team to be able to work with open source for usage, contribution, and consumption, and creation. Sorry. So we decide to create an open source strategy. For that, we have a huge. Sorry. So for that, you have a huge, strong sponsorship from our CDIO. So your CDIO is very sponsor of that, and he want that all the organization be open source first. Open source first should not be open source only. So when we want to acquire something or to decide to build something, we check if the open source cannot fit our needs. And if it not, we can think or get some other supplier, for example. But we need to check first for open source. But it's not only a top-down approach. We have at Michelin what we call participative strategy direction memo. That we ask employees to tell us how we will see Michelin in the next 6 years, for example. And with this participating strategy, we have a lot of people that say that they want to, at Michelin, acquire an open source strategy when they work on open source, that expose their project externally. So with that, it's only a top-down and also a bottom-up approach where we want to use more open source in the Michelin ecosystem. We want to use and to what are key drivers for open source. The first one is to reinforce the Michelin brand externally. We know well Michelin for tires, but in fact, to create tire, we have a lot of IT for that. And the Michelin brand is not well known for the IT that we do. We have a lot of contribution with academics, and open source is very helpful for us to be able to work together with some academics and to publish some thesis report or some material like that. And also one big thing that we did not in the slide is that it's also for us, it improves the way to avoid the vendor locking of the solution we have, for example. And we can apply the same thing when we decide to use open source, we apply the same thing in inner source. So for the inner source, what are the benefits for us and what are the key drivers, in fact, is that it will increase the level, the technical level of our teams, and it will also increase the collaboration between them, avoiding to reinvent the wheel and to make the multiple times the same project. So for that, since 2 years,
2 years ago, it was in March 2024, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we decided to create an OSPO. So our OSPO, Open Source Program Office, is the core team is made by 6 persons. We have the OSPO lead that is close to our CDIO, a fellow that is close to our CDIO. We have onboarded also the legal, one lawyer from the legal team. We have onboarding the security team, so we have one person dedicated to that into the OSPO team. And we have IT experts, so it's the OSPO is not linked to IT only. It's also more larger than IT. It is bad also for R&D, for all the part of the company. So the IT is an important contributor, and also we have decided to create a champion network that is on all the part of the company, that we can have there some relay of the usage of open source and promote also inner source inside Michelin.
Yeah, this is where they ask me, to come as an open source advisor and to help them build the governance for Michelin. And at that time, I needed to write down the strategy, the policies, open source policy, the inner source policy. We will see that just after. And this is where, for to close the loop with the beginning, this is where the legal counsel that was on the OSPO, she started to review changes through the merge requests. She contributed directly in the repository. And we were able to made her collaborate on the same platform as the engineers. So the governance framework, we started from a strategic memo from the direction, from the top management, and now we have governance, an open source and inner source strategy at the beginning, so big documents stating the view of the management, extract from what we've seen, the PSDM. And so we drafted an open source policy with the rules for consumption, contributions, creation of open source project, an inner source policy, so how to onboard a project, how to contribute to a project outside of your team, and how to use, just to use inner source project that are available to the company. Just like others, you know, like just like Wolfgang told about Mercedes, you know, sometimes this is open by default, and then we put an inner source tag directly on the project that are welcoming contributions from external people, external to the team. And we currently also have an open data policy, which is a work in progress. Currently, which it's not finished. We are working closely with the data scientist on that. So let's have a quick focus on each of these policy. I won't go into too much detail as we don't have time, but we will be open to question after that if you want. So the consumption part is we want to make the compliance and security first, you know, and every open source software you use inside Michelin, directly you must take it from the internal Artifactory, you know. So there is an internal Artifactory. It allows us to control the security, the compliance, and to also generate a software bill of material. And so we can see if we have a vulnerability, who's using what, which component. So to do some regular scanning, people internally, you do not have the right to use, you confirm that you do not have to download directly from the internet.
Yeah,
okay.
It's blocked.
We also define with the legal a license, a null list, like pre-approved license. So if the component you want to use is on this, has a license which is on the yellow list, that's fine. Everything that's permissive is allowed. And we have some copyleft restriction on that. There is a strict prohibition of GPL and AGPL for legal reason, and LGPL is also wise with exceptions, and then you need to have OSPO approval for that. And so in that case, we've got almost done last year, like 500,000 components that were downloaded in 2025. So that's basically for the consumption part. Then when you want to do contribution, that's the keyword is upstream first. We want to do, when it comes to IP management, we rely on the DCO, the Developer Certificate of Origin. And if you need to contribute to sign a CLA, you need to go through the OSPO, and the OSPO will review the CLA and sign it Michelin-wise. So you don't have to, everyone does not have to sign a CLA on its own. So they review the CLA, they say, okay, and so far I think we've signed a couple of CLA, like the Linux Foundation.
With Google.
Google, yes, yeah. Google one. And for Eclipse, for example, they signed part of the CLA, not everything. So part of the CLA is signed by the company, and for the other part, each developer must must tick the box before contributing. And so I think that's huge. You know, we developed GitHub app to track contribution done through GitHub. Do you want to tell a few words about it?
Yeah, in fact, what is very important for us is to track who made contribution, just to see and to check if we want that the usage increase, about contribution, usage, and consumption. So we want to track that. And so for that, we create a GitHub app. And all the members of the organization are linked to this GitHub app, and we track all the public events made by the Michelin address on GitHub, just to follow what has been done externally.
And then we also have an allow list. So each project, when you want to contribute to a project, it's put on the CERT, the security response team allow list, so that you don't get flagged each time there is a contribution with your Michelin address to that external repository. And we kind of have a good contribution, and we will come back later. We have a slide on this. And so we have 32 active contributors with more than 250 merge or pull requests generated, depending on if you are contributing to GitLab or GitHub. And so when you want to create an open source project, that's, as Julien said, that's open source first mindset. So think open source, and if you can't go open source, maybe you need to justify, say, no, I cannot for this and this reason, because there is some sensitive issues, and maybe that's too critical. We don't want to expose that to our competitors. So when you want to, there is a due diligence did by the which is done by the OSPO. So all your proposal must be submitted to the OSPO desk. We have an OSPO desk, which is basically a GitLab issue, GitLab repository where you can create issues, where you have templates for asking questions, so you can just fill in the template. And the OSPO is looking for the strategic fit, the security issues, the IP clearance, everything is okay. And the default licensing at Michelin is Apache 2. Because compared to MIT or other permissive licenses, so they want a broad adoption, and there is an explicit patent grant, and it's business friendly, so that's fine with Michelin. And the hosting governance, we have Michelin, that they have no GitHub organization dedicated in Michelin, and you've done a job at streamlining all Michelin organization, which were done by the time a bit everywhere, so everything is centralized now on the github.com/Michelin. And I think there is the CERT, which they have their own repository also, but I think it's going to be merged anytime soon. And we also make sure that you have all the mandatory files, the small governance inside the projects, so we're like good students to the community. And there were 9 projects published in 2025, including a project related to AI, PyTorch, and documentation. We'll see that a bit later. So that's for the open source. Now for inner source, yes, as you know, there are some constraints. The challenge is Michelin is composed just like many large groups, like Bosch, like Mercedes, with many legal entities. And we do not have, and we do not draft any specific inner source license. We just rely on a contract which was already made between legal entities, because they were used to sell software between them. And so we rely on this existing contract, considering inner source as another service delivery internally. And so we have internally, they have a GitLab, so we rely on the GitLab, and we use the inner source topic tag, so people know that they can project are open to external contributions. And so far we have 57 compliance inner source projects. Then another part is communication. So internally, we have this website called ospo.michelin.com, quite easy to remember. And so you see on this website, which is just a static Hugo website generated from Markdown again. And so we would, so the policies and the strategy, they are written in Markdown, and then we generate this website based on these Markdown files. And we also generate PDFs, so everyone can download the policy if they want. They can read it online. So we have access to all the governance documents from this website. And this is also a single point of contact from what you want to do for everything you want to do in open source inside Michelin. You have the link to the OSPO desk, of course, I talked before. You have the link to the public landing page we will see in a minute. To the external GitHub organization, so internally they are using Microsoft 365, and so there is team channels dedicated for that, for instant communication, and we have emails for the open source champion network, so you have access to everything. And so externally, if you want to have a look, that's a static page, also opensource.michelin.io and not .com. There is nothing fancy, that's everything the others are doing, just saying, yes, we love open source. You have a link to the IT blog, the GitHub organization, the Michelin cybersecurity team. So if you want to know the Michelin footprint, the open source footprint on the internet, this is where you want to have a look. When it comes to driving the cultural change, we have two main things. One is the open source champion program, and the other one is the training program we've set up. The open source champion program is just a gamification for people to, not kind of an incentivization for people to contribute, some rewards, but not financial, to to do a follow-up on the previous question on the previous talk. This is just for people to showcase their contributions, their skill when it comes to open source and inner source. So we have 6 different topics, like if you do some contributions, if you do some inner source, open source contributions, if you participate in talks, so we have all those badges, and with 3 different levels from bronze to platinum, and then we award badges depending on the success you achieve. And I think you will get promoted for Eco Shaper, maybe today with your talk.
I already made some talk about open source. So.
Yes. So yes, the idea is to show people they are increasing their open source and inner source expertise, and they can show it to the rest of the world, at least internally, and externally if they want to publish it on LinkedIn. We also have this monthly leaderboard we publish internally on the internal social networks, where we list the achievement shared goal, because there are annual shared goals. The numbers of contribution this month, the top contributors, the top projects, and the projects looking for help. So that's the Open Source Champion program. Then there is the training program. It's not nothing fancy there also. The different modules, it's based on what we've seen, what they've done at Mercedes, for example. I remember Wolfgang talking about the awareness, then consumption, contribution, creation, and inner source. It's basically based on the structure of the policy and what I've seen in other companies doing this kind of things. Under the hood, but we started to do it training as code, using ASCII-Doc and Weevil.js, just like the presentation you have in front of you. And from the start, we separated the Michelin specific from the generic part, like what is open source, what is inner source, how to contribute, how to be a good citizen. And Michelin decided that the generic part will be an open source project. And so now that's a reality. That's still a really young project, which is called Eclipse OSILC. Open source and inner source learning kit. This is where everyone can contribute, can reuse internally if they want, and that's the content is under CC BY 4.0, so you can reuse it. That's a permissive license. You don't need to. That's not share-alike, so you don't have to publish if you integrate some specific, you don't have to publish it back. You're not forced to, so you can just use the include mechanism provided with ASCII-Doc, which is kind of a markdown, and that's it. Another question you may have is, and I've heard throughout the day, is the funding and the resource challenge. Some of them call them, sometimes the tragedy of commons, or internally also. So managers, people, they see open source and inner source as an overhead for them, because you need to put more documentation sometimes, review the pull request, the management of the community. This is kind of a burden, seen as a burden. Furthermore, there is no central OSPO budget allocated to maintain, dedicated to give to those individual projects involved in open source and inner source. And the team, the maintainers, they must secure their own budget, or maybe sometimes use what we call internally a liquid buffer. This is kind of the 20% time you have to work on your time, your internal time on free project, on the project you want to do. The OSPO just have funding for really specific initiatives like the OSPO, the build and the run of the OSPO, which is why I'm here today, in part. Also for the communication, to set up the trainings, and the last one is, yes, if you have major strategic initiatives, sometimes, when we have big, large external contribution, like the one you did on GitLab, or Kafka, sometimes the OSPO can find some funding for that. Also, the OSPO and Michelin at large is there to, as we call it, that's not only participating, but trying to sustain the ecosystem. They are members of the Linux Foundation, the CNCF, and also the Eclipse Foundation. They work with some consortia to work with academic institutions and research, but you told us about that a bit before. And they can also participate in some sponsorship programs, give some money to specific projects that are really critical internally, like we've told. I think we've discussed this afternoon earlier in the boombox about the log4 shell, the Heartbleed vulnerabilities. So, just to conclude, on the roadmap, so the major contribution, if you have maybe in 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds.
We made some major contribution on Kafka, for Stream, so for GitLab, to implement some feature that's very helpful for us. And TimeSketch is mainly for security team. And we won an award. It was very good to see that Michelin can win award close to Slack, Uber, and tech companies. And we are a manufacturing company that won award on Kafka. So that's great.
We recently also published what we call internally the State of Open report, the Michelin State of Open report, where you have figures, what the achievement in open source and inner source. So that was first internally, and I think we released it last week or 2 weeks ago publicly. If you go to the blog IT, you go to opensource.michelin.io, you go to then their blog, the blog IT of Michelin, and then we'll find an article with the State of Open report. Yes, monthly you have shared goals also. So you have the picture of the previous shared goals. So we define in early 2025 metrics and numbers of contributors needs to be achieved. And then you reach that's 120% of the objectives were achieved last year. And so we have that's shared goals. They are defined to foster contributions, to foster inner source. And we want this year to increase contribution by 25% for 2026. And so speaking about 2026, the roadmap is, as I told you before, have an open data policy, more training, and more external contributions. And then some key takeaways. So there is no magic recipe, we use what's working. We were inspired by what Porsche, Mercedes, and other Bosch did on that. You need a strong sponsorship. You need to involve a wide range of skills right from the start inside the OSPO. Have a single point of contact and be pragmatic and try to be open by default. And maybe just to break the ice, the first question. If you have DeLorean and can get back at time, what would you have done differently? So this DeLorean, it's have Michelin tires, of course, and yes, maybe one thing is to improve the training, start earlier and smaller. Maybe we tackle this part maybe a bit late, and that's it.
You said you have a very prohibitive stance on the GPL. I'm wondering why, and doesn't that exclude you from using stuff like Linux and so on?
No, we want to avoid using GPL or contaminant license, mainly to build software. So, for example, we use Git. So, in fact, you use GPL, we use Unix, we use Linux, but we don't want to use dependency that are GPL when we create software.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.